How's it going, everybody? This podcast is brought to you by Rise Make Life Workout, a health, self-development, and lifestyle platform building a passionate community of knowledge seekers, creative dreamers, and future leaders.
For details on the latest Rise event that will feature expert speakers in the field of self-development and growth, check out www.rise-workout.com.
That's www.rise-workout.com. Enjoy the show. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the High Frequency Club podcast. My name is Marianne Infante.
And I'm Sinead Vimman. We're here talking all things self-development, growth and mindset.
In this episode, we have a guest, Marianne Infante, who's an actor, producer,
and writer. Very big creative in New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. You might have seen her on Shortland St or a lot in the theatre scenes as well. This is a super valuable episode because she talks about, her creative process, the things that she has done to get to where she is now. And really, as she totaled, she's not even really getting started yet,
Yeah.
People think it's big time now, but really she's like, nah, this is just the start of it.
Yeah. And amongst, I guess, all that hustle and grind is that trying to find the balance of having solo time and being able to switch off and, I guess find that balance and be able to take time to find sort of gratitude in the small things of day-to-day life.
I think a lot of people resonates because we live in this era of glorification of the hustle and grind, and me personally and professionally knowing Marianne, she is the epitome of that. And it's been so good hearing her journey on how she's been able to learn through it and also unlearn through it to find a sense of grounding with her work now. There's a lot of practicality in there and great stories to help show examples.
Yeah, so be sure to check it out at the High Frequency Club, YouTube, Apple and Spotify, and let us know what you think.
Enjoy the show. It's weird for me because normally when I speak to Marianne, just like I do with my parents, I code switch. I go Filipino American accent, but because I remember one time I asked Marianne, I was like, yo, I don't know who my authentic accent is. Have I been fake this whole time? Because I don't know whether I'm a Kiwi accent or a Filipino accent, because I talked to Filipino, my family in that accent, and she said, it's not about your authenticity, it's just about the efficiency of communication.
Yeah.
So if I started talking like this to my parents, they'd be like, wait, what's he trying to say? They'd add that friction.
Yeah.
I've always held on to that lesson. So thanks, Marianne. Anyway, it's not about me, it's about you. Thanks for jumping on. Really appreciate your time. We've been wanting to do this for a while now. Hey, so it's bloody good to get you on. So first, for the people that don't know you, did you want to give them a rundown on who you are, what your background is personally and professionally?
Kia ora tātou, kumusta ko po ngan? Ako po Marianne Infante. My name is Marian, and I'm a Kapampangan Filipino actor, writer, and producer here in Aotearoa. I co-found and co-direct Kuya Collaborative with Kuya Marian, and I also executive produce Proudly Asian Theatre Company. So I work predominantly in the creative sector across the theatre and screen industry. And I guess the main thing to know about me in terms of like my kaupapa as a creative or as a maker, as a person, is to continue empowering Asian theatre practitioners or Asian storytellers so that we can hear more diverse and inclusive stories for our Asian whānau in Aotearoa to feel seen. The end.
Love it. So you've had a pretty big year, Marianne. You've made a breakout on Shortland St. You've also just released your first short film that you wrote and also starred in. And I'm sure there's a bit of, because we've talked about it, but there's two worlds about it, because people will say, fuck, she's hit the game. When I know there's a party that say, bro, I'm not even starting yet, And also at the same time, you've been at this game for a very, very long time. It just didn't happen overnight. So did you want to talk about, the trials and tribulations on what it means to be a creative and the things that aren't publicized as much?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of glorification that comes around within our industry, I suppose, being like such a public-facing career. And a lot of it, people are starting to become more aware of all, the well-being and mental health aspect of what we do, being so extroverted, I guess. And I think a lot of the things that people don't realize is a lot of us people who exert so much energy, we're actually quite introverted as well. So we do need a lot of time for ourselves to really like recollect and re-navigate our world, because I feel like as actors we're constantly dancing between different worlds as different characters with different consciousness and subconsciousness. So I think it gets really gruesome. Like people don't understand how a person, you know, why do it if it's so hard. But I think the biggest joy I get out of this is that I get to live so many lives, not just in this on screen, but like, you know, in the theater productions we do and the things I write. If I go away for a couple of hours, whether that be in the middle of the day or like at 1 a.m. where I'm in my biggest like writing, just writing mode, you kind of just transport yourself into another space, which actually then becomes quite a good breathing space for like me as a creative. But I think the hardest thing is balancing all of the hustle of constantly juggling projects and also, you know, your personal life. I think that's been the biggest challenge. I think ever since I graduated from Unitec, from drama school in 2016, I've kind of just hit the ground running. I don't think I've actually stopped. Sometimes I think I've stopped, even when I go away on holiday for a couple of weeks or a month, like it feels like I've stopped, but my brain is actually still constantly in the game. You know, even when I'm not physically in a project, I'm already thinking like 6 months ahead of where I'm going to be. So I'm still technically kind of working. So the biggest challenge I sort of acknowledge myself to still continue to like figure out and educate myself in is how to actually properly rest, or how to give myself the rest I deserve and require, so that I can actually keep running this long, you know, marathon, because that's what it really is. It's a marathon. And you're right, Kuya, like in terms of you talking about, you know, I've hit the screens. I've you know, people are like, she's made it. She's a big deal. Like there's two to three parts to that, actually. Like it definitely made me really reflect on like my measure of success, and also my measure of output, in terms of like how much of my energy do I deliver and share with now a bigger slice of the country than just Auckland. Because, you know, when you're in theatre, it's more just in Auckland, but then you kind of have to navigate how much of my energy do I then give to the rest of, you know, the community that's essentially outside of my circle. But yeah, people have given me the rhetoric of, oh, she's made it. She's, you know, she's finally done it. But actually, in hindsight, I think about it, I was just like, I made it. I felt like I made it ages ago. Like when we did Pinay, when, you know, we cracked that historical, you know, milestone. When I actually ended up running Pat, like for me, that was a big, you know, achievement for me. And also in like smaller, quantifiable ways, I think I really made it when I did Pinay, and the community that I managed to find and hold on to that actually now carries me through. Like I wouldn't have done TKC or Mekeni if it wasn't for the journey that Pinay started, of really like me going back to my roots. And honestly, I don't think Shortland Street would have found me if I didn't do Pinay. Do you know what I mean? Like when I started really waving the Filipino flag in a contemporary way, but like in the arts, then suddenly the Filipino voices started becoming prominent. James Roque's like, you know, comedy stand-up they couldn't ignore it anymore, when they were like, well, how can we ignore that when there are Filipinos performing and they're in the scene. So I honestly think Pinay was like my pivot of like the beginning of the success, but I also do agree, I think I am only just getting started. Am I allowed to swear in this?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed how you talked about, you know, you wearing different hats and having that challenge of being able to switch off. And I think would really like to come back to that later on when we talk about, you know, how you find that work-life balance and what processes you use to shut off, to be introverted, Marianne. But I'd like to touch on now because obviously we're really, really close. Not only do we work together, we PT together, train together, but we're friends. We've been friends for a very long time. I've been part of the Pinay crew. You've given me so much opportunity being a creative Filipino here in New Zealand. I also watch a lot of the environment between the comments of how people are celebrating you right now. How do you feel a pressure on, holding that Filipino, what do you call it, representation? Because you're pretty much, if not the first, I don't know, I'm not clued up. No one quote me on this, but to me it sounds like you're the first to be able to really break through for the Filipinos out there in New Zealand. Do you feel that sense of pressure? And if you do, how do you manage it? How do you ground yourself?
Yeah, I did, especially it's a mix. It's a mix of me being like, fuck that. To me just being like, I just want to do my own shit and like have actual fun. Like I'm so young, there's so many mistakes to be had. Like, that I think I still continue to have that mindset of like, I'm also not perfect, and I know I'm also navigating, figuring out what it does mean to still be Filipino, despite being the most vocal Filipino that people might think. And yeah, people constantly compliment me for really like upholding, my Filipino-ness. And especially when Shortland St came out, I definitely felt at the start a little bit suffocated, I guess, in a way where I was just like, oh, I have to just be Filipino. But then I spoke to the people I really trusted, and like, I think I gave you a call as well, I think, when all of that started coming out. And I definitely felt the pressure in terms of like, I'm going to get it wrong. And I know I'm going to get it wrong. But I don't know how to be okay about getting it wrong. And then that definitely like, gave me a lot of anxiety around all of the stuff I've already worked through, and like what it means to be Filipino here in New Zealand, and to suddenly be the face of the Filipino on primetime TV slot. It was definitely like quite nerve-wracking. But then when I really got down to really nurturing my character, I also found ways to like love the process in a way that I also understood her in my own lens. Like, she moved here, she migrated here, she had to sacrifice a lot of things to be here. She's also navigating the two worlds aspect of her lifestyle. So I had to find ways for me to really understand my character, so then I didn't feel like I was holding like the torch for Filipinos. I'm holding the torch for Filipino diaspora, but I also think I just had a massive cry. Like, I don't know how else to say that. I just had a massive cry to sort of like give myself that release of pressure, to be like, you might be it right now, but you're not it. Just because you're Filipino, you don't know everything Filipino. And I don't think, especially with the drama like Shortland St, I don't think there's any one way to do it. Like, it's so dramatic and so like big that even her as a character is so outside of the Filipino construct as well, and how they've created her. So I think that as soon as I just sort of realized that and actually let go of that pressure that I may or may not have put on myself, I think I felt a lot of freedom. And I was just like, just do you, and do what makes sense, and do what sings, like even whenever I get the script, I'm always constantly questioning like, how would I do this? If I was this Filipino, how would I deliver this? Or how would I, and at the moment she's like, either you love her, you hate her character. It's been quite challenging with regards to like not just playing her as a Filipino, but playing someone who's so different to me. Mm-hmm. So I think there's multiple layers and nuances to like the pressure of like, oh fuck, I'm playing a Filipino, but she's a bit of a bitch at the moment. Like how do I deal with that? And like, they're gonna hate Filipinos. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want to be the reason they hate Filipinos. But then I do see a lot of people who are really supportive of her and really, really sees through her shit, which I'm really proud about, because I was just like, yeah, because I constantly judge my own character, which is not, as you know, Kuya, as an actor, it's not helpful. Mm. So just like actually finding ways to love her, and then, it kind of becomes like and vice versa. Like I ended up loving myself in the process, end up loving her in the journey. So, yeah. And then the pressure is always there. I don't think it ever goes away, but it's more, how I respond to the pressure. I think that's what I'm really mindful about, how I respond to the challenges that it presents, rather than me really succumbing to the pressure. Yeah.
I fully resonate with that. That's awesome. And sometimes I think pressure is important because it helps us really realize the stakes, And you're right, the way to combat that is having those tools on how to manage and respond them, and to not fall under that pressure and lose your authenticity on that road. I've known Marianne for so long that I know she's probably one of the most vocal, most loudest person that I've ever met. And I want to touch on tall poppy syndrome, because I'm sure it wasn't until Shortland Street that you started to once you started to get a little bit of fame, that you started to get the tall poppy syndrome seeping in from the external world. I'm sure as your character, being yourself, being loud, I'm sure it would have seeped into some of your work beforehand anyway. How do you manage that? How do you deal with people's negativity and the reviews and the critics?
Yeah, I think because I'm still quite new in the game, I'm still yet to really uncover and unveil that for myself. I think I've been really good at ignoring the comment section because I get told to. But then it's really funny because my sister sometimes stumbles on the page and she'll have to call me because she gets really worked up by the comments. But then it's really interesting because having been in the industry, I guess, in all the different hats I wear and how I really value people's haora and well-being in the arts, I know how to distance myself from those comments that are noise. I think they're noise. And some of those noise are helpful. Some of them really push me and some of them really fuel me. But then there's just unnecessary noise, which 99% of those comments are. But then I also remind myself that those comments and noises, though some of them present negatively, they are never about me. They're actually about the character. And for me to be able to gain all of that attention, whether it be negative or positive, they have a reaction to the character, which is actually the reaction we want. So in a way, I turn that negativity and I turn it to an ego boost and be I'm doing my job really well for all these motherfuckers to hate me, because that's what I'm meant to do. They're not meant to love me because she's got shit to work through. So I think, being able to really recycle that negative vibe to something that is useful for me has been really powerful for me. But also I think I would be lying if I said that some days I'd be man, I wish I just played a likable character, or I wish everyone just liked me and just knew what a Filipino accent was and stopped giving me shit about it. And kind of going through what you were saying earlier on about the accent thing, people are constantly whenever I do those interviews outside of Shortland Street and and on the social media, and obviously I talk with my Kiwi accent, people are oh, she does talk normally, and instantly the hair in the back of my neck turns, and I'm just my Filipino accent is normal too. I kind of go Super Saiyan a little bit, but then I was just no, this is also part of the process for people who are welcoming this new character, who might not be someone that they encounter in their normal daily lives or path, So I think it is a really rewarding process, as long as I know how to look at things half glass full. Do you know what I mean? Because it can get really, really brutal. You got to get good at blocking people and ignoring people. But I think, what was your question? I got.
No, I think
you answered it. Is that something you find that, like you said, sort of almost somewhat ignoring the noise or turning the negatives into a positive? Is that something you find you've always been able to do in your acting career, or something that you've kind of learned over the years and got better at?
I think it's something I got better at, especially as a producer. I'm so risk adverse. I'm constantly doing all these risk assessments, health and safety planning, especially now with COVID. I think even before I got to the stone, I had done all of the mental preparations to equip myself with the people and the tools I need to make sure when I hit this post, I'm not going to be at a loss. What I mean by that is I knew who were in my corner, whenever I knew I would feel sort of a really heavy cloud coming over me, I know exactly who to call for advice. I know who exactly to reach out to. And it's just like being aware that though I present loud and though I present bold and though I present really strong and like no one can screw with me kind of vibe, I also still know that I am really vulnerable at the bottom layer of all of that. Like, you know, there's a very thin veil of vulnerability that holds my strength. And I'm very aware that there will be days I'm not going to be okay. And being honest enough with myself to like just cry, or like I'm emotional right now just thinking about it. But I know who are my support networks, whether that be me allowing myself to just stay in bed a little bit longer, or me just allowing myself to have cereal instead of like the healthy breakfast I have, or whether it be Ling being on speed dial, or me just texting mom and being like, I feel like shit, can you tell me what to do today? Or calling Alyssa and being like, am I Filipino? Can you just like clarify with me? You know, like, and actually just being okay with all of the questions that I know is okay to entertain, because then when I find the answers, whether by myself or with the people around me, it actually feels, you come out the other side feeling really validated in a way that is healthy and sustainable for me. And also at the end of the day, I'm like, whether I'm doing something right or wrong, people will have their own thoughts, you know? And I think understanding that everyone also has their own journey. They're also watching the show from a completely different lesson, from a completely different walk of, you know, life. Like, if anything, I'm just like, there are people watching this person unfold before their eyes while she makes all of these mistakes, for them to either love or hate her in the process. But at the end of the day, she's there and they have to like be aware of her. So I think for me, that's enough right now, whether, you know, I get enough love for my friends and my family. You know, like, I think I remember Marwan posting something about like gassing your friends up. Like, I'm all about that life. Like, gas them up. Like, it's, you know, we do things with it, like, you know, with such great purpose or no purpose at all. But I think I really support people who just like enjoy what they're doing. And right now I'm really, really enjoying what I'm doing. And I feel really, really privileged to be where I am today. Because for me, I'm like, yeah, this will launch me in places I've never even thought about. I never thought I'd be on TV, for crying out loud. But we are. So, you know, so it's actually, yeah, it's also quite surreal. And I need to also remind myself that it is quite surreal, and I need to really live it up while I'm in this euphoric space.
Just going to the creation of your short film Mekeni. You wrote it, you starred in it, and you had an entire team. It was a whole professionally funded project. What was that process like of giving up that creative freedom? Because, you know, I can, if I put myself in your shoes, that would have been my baby. I worked on it for, you know, I would have, like you worked on it for a couple of years or so. And then just giving up that creative freedom to your team. What was that process like? Was that hard? Did you find yourself, you know, stepping out of your role and maybe crossing some lines? And if so, how did you manage that?
I'll be honest, I started being like, oh, this is going to be easy because we've done it before. When we did Pinay, like Kuya, James was really there, really held me in the process as a maker, as a writer, and as an actor. It'll be the same for film. It wasn't. Like, it made me really admire the different process between a writer in screen and a writer for theatre. But what was really confronting in the screen side is that, though I really, really trusted the creatives that I chose to go on, you know, into the project with me, literally a couple of days before we went into shoot, where I was to remove my producer hat and just be the actor, not the writer or the producer, I suddenly had the anxiety of like, holy crap, like the only Kapampangan in the core of this team is no longer holding the Kapampangan play. Like, I became, you know, like, I was just like, oh, like, I got really tense about it. And I was like, am I losing something here? Have I just given my Kapampangan script to non-Kapampangans, and will that be a detriment to the work? But then actually, once all of that vulnerability came out, my team really came to the table and was like, like, you know, they were really honest as well in terms of like, it's also their project, and they also really care about the kaupapa and the, you know, the purpose and the mission of the work. And as soon as I was reminded that, oh shit, like I have to honor past Marianne for choosing these people, because past me knew these were the right people to work with, who will hold my baby as, you know, with much love as I would have done it by myself. And the reality is I couldn't have done it by myself. And when I then relinquished that sort of need to hold on, it actually, the project grew. You know, I think it was acknowledging the fact that I was feeding this child on my own, when actually, if I had just let this child be fed by 5 other people, she'd be a fat ass happy baby by now. You know what I mean? For going with that analogy. So once that process happened, we moved into filming. Everyone was doing what they were really good at. It was such a joyous process, because then I could just be the actor, and then and there were moments, the director would pull me aside and be like, hey, I need your writer brain, and like really, really respecting what hats people were wearing so that people can focus. But yeah, I didn't think I'd find it hard, but I was doing little things that actually was slowly coming to the surface for me, that I was either, stepping the toes of the director or stepping the toes of the producer, when actually in that point of time, what was required of me is just to be an actor. And that there will be time for me to come in and pitch in my producer or my writer thoughts. But it was really hard, I think, as someone who really prides himself in like being a collaborative person, which I still think I am. It was really nice to know in the process what that feeling is like, or what that feeling of insecurity, or what do you call it? Like it's almost like a survival mode, like a mechanism of like, oh shit, like this could make or break my child kind of vibe. And then you kind of, either fight or you fly, right? And at that, I'm always a fighter, like classic. But then what was actually necessary was for me to just like chill out, and actually let someone else fight my battle for me. And I think that was a really good learning curve for me as well, with regards to like, I guess, my advocacy or like my activism, is that I actually don't have to do any of this by myself. Like there are other people alongside me who actually holds me stronger than I do when I'm doing it by myself, because then I actually just wear myself out. And that's kind of just been like an ongoing journey ever since COVID, really. But for Mekeni, that became a poignant learning process prior to shoot. And then after that, it was kind of like, lol, remember that time we cried and I felt like I was really threatened by the process. But moving forward, I think it's quite enriching. Like it's quite, it was a big learning curve, and I was really glad I learned it with people who I felt safe with, rather than people who I would have felt like, oh, am I going to get blacklisted now? Like, you know what I mean? Like I was making mistakes and learning with people who also really valued me as not just as a creative, but also as a person. So I have a lot of gratitude for my team. Letting me make mistakes.
How long have you been out of drama school now? Because that's where we met, right? Unitech, doing our batch.
Triggering question. 2016, I finished. So 5 years.
It's been 5 years. What advice would you give Marianne, who was just starting out in drama school?
Chill the fuck out. Chill out. Take your days off. Don't do shit on the weekends. It's okay. But you know what? I say all of that because I think that's where I am now. Like that's the space I've come to now. But I honestly wouldn't be where I am now if past me didn't do all of that grind work, right? But if I could honor this, what I know is necessary now. I mean, it might have taken me 10 years longer rather than just 5 if I wasn't so like aggressive with my hustle. Aggressive in a kind way. But I definitely would have told her, like, it's cool to take those weekends off, mate. It's cool to just go camping. It's cool to turn your phone off. You don't have to answer an email as soon as it gets to you. Like, but I think I would also tell my past self to just be kind to myself. I think it's something I always have to remind myself now. Like, just be nice to yourself. Like, things will come. you don't plant a seed and yell at it to like grow the next day and be a tree, you know, like you water it, you talk to it, you put fertilizer in it, you know, you do little things so that, you know, in the next year and a bit it grows to a tree or a little plant. So I think I'm constantly unpacking ways of like not just being good to myself, but actually really, it sounds so cheesy, but actually like loving myself in the process, rather than just, you know, like the saying of like, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, and actually really honoring that. And yeah, I think if I had taken a bit more time for myself, I think I wouldn't have had as many breakdowns on the way. You know, if I just did all of my check-ins as, you know, to just rest and take a breather and do the things that matter, like be in nature, be with your family, be with your friends. Because I think at the end of the day, that's actually what's really sustaining me. You know, my friends support, my friends love, my family's, you know, love is what sustains me, not the countless of emails I've responded to, you know, like really investing in the things that matters. And for me, that's the relationships and the quality time I spend in those relationships for me.
Do you find you have that better balance then now, that work-life balance? Because like you said earlier, sometimes you find you sort of struggle to switch off, even if you do have a day off or you do have a weekend away, that you still struggle to stop thinking about the next idea or the next project. So how are you, I guess, learning or allowing yourself to switch off a bit more?
I think the beautiful thing about working as a full-time actor is that now I'm in a very privileged position where I have a stable income, which actually means I don't have to work the weekends, which means when I come home after a long 10-hour day shoot, I actually know I deserve the night off. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's really weird because like we do glorify the grind and people who work so much. And now I'm just like, nah, like I've, you know, even sometimes when I have the day off, I'm like, oh, I answered 3 emails today. Like that is me done. I'm out, you know? I think I've definitely gotten better, but I feel like my partner would say the opposite. But, you know, I definitely know to like honor my meal times more. Some days easier than others because, you know, deadlines are always up and about. And though I am, you know, working full time, I am still running like 2 different companies alongside that. Like sometimes I'm better some days than I am in others. So yeah, I think it's still constantly a journey for me, but it's really weird because now I have like the monetary side to that success. I feel like I am able to allow myself to not work. Do you know what I mean? Which is really bad because I'm just like, I should have had that mindset way before, like before the money aspect came in. But the thing is, we have to put food on the table. We have to pay the bills. You know, we have to do all of these things so that I feel safe in my practice. And that is to be able to pay for the minimum. And now that, you know, I feel really lucky that I can cover all of my bases in, you know, that I suddenly am, I've like, what my this new leap in my career has actually given me is just like allowing myself to chill out, which is nice. But also I was just like, oh my God, I can just like imagine all of my peeps who don't have this comfort. And then suddenly you really just feel your sense of privilege and you're just like, what can I do with all of this privilege? Who wants donation? What do I support, you know? But yeah, I think I want to say I am better. Definitely from 5 years ago, I would say I'm better. But some days requires more from me than other days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you continue to touch on about that perspective and the duality of things. Like, I'm a big advocate of like getting your rest time, but also at the same time, I've never known how valuable rest was because I never used to do it as well, just like you. And I wouldn't advocate that to someone who is always resting and doing nothing. Obviously, you don't need rest. You're getting enough rest. You need to go out there and, you know, put some work in. You know what I mean? That's why, it's so important to really understand where you are on that journey. And you don't really know how privileged a stable income is unless you've never had it before. You know, you don't know how the lessons and the self-awareness you get from the grind and the hustle if you've never hustled and grind before, you know? You don't know the value of rest unless you've never rested before. So I always say it's always important to really explore your limits. Like you say this, you got to know your limits to find your limits, you know, but you've got to have that self-awareness to be like, okay, I found my limits. It's now time to regress and incorporate what I was doing before, or, you know, to get that, to get that balance.
And I also just want to add, like, I think you've absolutely hit it in the head. Like, I wouldn't have known what that limit is until I've pushed myself to that point, right? And I mean, I'm not saying do that and find that point for yourself constantly, because that's also quite taxing and exhausting. But you know, I've done the hustle for 5 years, and I would say a lot of people are still doing the hustle for a lot longer. But I think when I got to the point where I was saying no to things, to projects, and actually, or even just like mates who hang out, and then you really have to think of like, what energy do I need today? It's not that. And actually being honest enough with your mates who, you know, you wish you should be honest with. You're like, actually, I need me time today. Can we reschedule? I think for me, that was a big sign of growth and a big sign of self-respect, as well as respect for your mate. Because, you know, you don't want to spend your hour with your mate and you actually would rather be somewhere else sleeping, you know, like that's, you know, your mates deserve that from you as well as you deserve that from yourself. So I think I'm really grateful because a lot of the people in my corner are all, you know, have gone or going through the similar journey, and we see each other. You know, if you're like, I just need to rest today, and you're like, I see you get that, you know. So yeah, very grateful.
I think it's a conversation worth having as well, because like if I was to speak to, let's say, whether it's a creative or a personal trainer that's maybe 4 to 5 years behind where I am, and not in a hierarchical way, just in an experience way, I would say, fuck, I lost my train of thought. Not again. It is important to hustle and grind, but it's important to hustle and grind on the right things. So like you said before, 99% of the things that we hear in the external world is just noise, and whether that's opinions or what people think that we should be doing or their expectations of us, a lot of it is just noise. So don't be just hustling and grinding for the sake of hustle and grind, but hustle and grind for the things that are actually meaningful to you. Because some people can just go around chasing their tail, and next thing you know, it's been 5 to 10 years and you've really still been in the same place that you were at. You know what I mean?
And I think that comes back to what you said earlier about having that clear measure of success from the get-go, because otherwise if you don't have that, you're never going to be, you might be achieving things, like you said, getting on Shortland St or whatever, but still not be happy if your goal's like, yeah, but I want to be the best of whatever. So being clear on those, I think, as well.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to the question of, Marianne, how do you define success?
I really define success, you know what, it's in moments when I can stop and reflect that I really understand what my definition of success is. You know, when I'm not in the motion, because then you can just sort of sit back and see what you have done or what you've achieved. And I think for me, what I've held on to as success is really the relationships I've managed to nurture along the way. I think for me, it's actually not about how many films or how many plays I've seen or how many plays I've made. It's actually how many people have decided to stay in my life because of the projects that I made with them. And I don't mean that in a way of like, am I loved? It's more just like the valuable and meaningful connections that I've made along the way that have added to my growth or my development as a person or my perspective in the world. Like, you know, like when I got the position to, you know, spearhead Pat with Chai Ling, for me, that was really successful, not because I'm running a company, but because I was finally working with one of the powerhouses I've been wanting to work for in like years, you know, for me to admire these amazing creatives and people and suddenly to be on the same level as them is so bizarre, and it's never something I want to take for granted. So I think for me, it's definitely the relationships I've garnered along the way, and who I don't know if you know, but if you do know, it's one of those moments when you feel like you're stuck, and you think of the first person you think of, you call, and they pick up the phone and they really come out there for you to like sit with you in your car for like 10 minutes or really or like show up in your driveway. For me, that's success. You know, I'm like, this person sees me. And also like, for me, my measure of success is also just the way my parents respond to my success, when it's not like monetary. Because I don't think my level of success or my measure of success have ever been connected to money, because I'm so used to not having money. Even now that I have money, I'm always like, it could disappear, you know, like, so I'm constantly like saving and investing and, you know, so I'm just like, for me, success has never been tied to money, though it's really helpful. I think for me, it's what tiny pleasures I can get from that, like going away for a weekend. For me, I'm like, you know, being able to shut off my phone for an entire weekend, that's success for me. You know, I don't know if, I mean, you know, people either values that or don't, but for me, I'm like, when I don't have to hustle as hard, I think that's success for me, you know. And I mean, that comes with a, you know, state of status as well, because now I'm, you know, people know my name, people, you know, want to talk to me. Someone asked me a while ago, you know, when I remember first coming out of drama school, I would stay behind in the foyer of the theatre, see who I can talk to, the people who matter in the industry who I can talk to. And it's really interesting because now when I finish seeing a show and I'm with someone who's maybe not as experienced as me, or like you said, in terms of like how, you know, how new they are in the industry, my measure of success for me for that day isn't who I talk to, but it's who I managed to link that one person with someone who can help them. You know, that's my quota. Then I'm like, I'm out. I'm going to go home now. Before I was like, who do I talk to? How many people can I have drinks with? But now I'm just like, I'm going to see someone and I'm like, those two people need to meet because they need that connection. And for me, I'm like, I won. That's me. I've connected someone with another person. And now I can go away now because that person can grow without me now. And they don't need me anymore. So I think for me, that's a success. Yeah. Is that weird? That's weird.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it's very heartwarming. It's extremely heartwarming. And me knowing you personally and professionally, that is absolutely how you hold yourself. People are extremely privileged to know you, and even more privileged to be in your inner circle, to be around a person who's... we've had lunch before and she's told me the things that she's done and I've cried. And it's lunchtime. And we're in the...
Every time I see him, he cries.
Yeah, it is. So I know for myself, I'm so privileged to know you in that way.
Thanks, Kuya. Same, back at you, honestly. Like, it's incredibly fueling to be working with such like passionate, driven people. Because I think that's something I also tell people I mentor in the industry, whether that be a producer or stage manager. The key things that you actually need in this industry are things I cannot teach you. I can teach you how to do your admin. I can teach you to organize, but I cannot teach you how to hustle. I cannot teach you how to build your drive or your motivation. I cannot teach you how to care. You have to do all of that by yourself because those are innate from you, you know, like that comes from your humanity and why you want to be here. You know, like I always tell my, like the students or the mentees I look after, I'm like, I can give you all of these tools that will help you that I know have taken me to the next level, but I can't teach you how to take initiative. I can't teach you how to, you know, I can't make you get out of bed. You need to figure out what gets you out of bed. That all needs to be from your own journey and your own character building. And I think for me, as someone who really believes in the people in the process rather than, you know, the project, just the project, you know, like people ask me, it's like, what makes you decide what project to work on? It's honestly the people for me, because it's not about the money. The outcome is going to be good regardless of, you know, what I work on, but it really is defined by the people in the process. So I'm like, for me, if I don't care about the people or the project, it's going to be a flop from get-go. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, no one can teach you to love and to care. So I think for me, I really see people who give a shit. And I think that's a quality I really see in you, Kuya Marwan. Not just in your creative side, but also in the way you PT. I don't think you could successfully PT all of the, you know, all of the testimonies I see on your page. I 100% believe them because I know the amount of energy you put in your manakatanga to your clients. And I think that side of your career, or that side of what you deliver in your craft, that's the part no one can actually pay for. That's the shit you give for free. People pay you for your time, people pay you for your expertise and the years of training you've done, and all of the trauma that you've gone through, so you can actually teach your mistakes to people. That's the stuff they pay for. But your level of like aroha and manakitanga, I think those are the shit we give out just willy-nilly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you.
Right now?
I actually feel seen. I was like, shit, she sees through me. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
It's
Every time I hang out with her.
But it's the same with acting though. Do you know what I mean? Like the most moving performances you'll see are the most open and the most generous performances. Like, sure, that person worked really hard, went to drama school, but at the end of the day, no one can teach you how to give a fuck. Like, you know, like you have to find your reasons. Well, you have to find your own fucks to give. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes you don't have enough of it. Some days I'm like, I don't have any fucks today. Other days you have too much. Do you know what I mean? And I do think, sadly, sometimes, you know, actually, no, not sadly. I definitely know I'm one of those people who have quite a lot of fucks to give. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'll end up being one of those inspo TED Talk people one day. I don't know.
I'd listen to it.
Yeah.
We'd listen to it, no doubt. Hey, look, we know that you've got another meeting coming up, so we just got a couple more questions before we wrap up. What's on the horizon for Marianne? What are the goals? What are you looking forward to? We've spent a lot of time. We've spent a lot of time looking in the past in hindsight. Now let's look forward.
So I journal a lot, or I write a lot. And I have books for different projects that I have, so that I can just like regurgitate things. What's in the process for me, or what's in the horizon? I'm getting married in like less than 4 weeks. So that's a big life shift for me. And it's COVID, but we're actually like, people are like, you know, people are really sweet because they're like, I really hope you get your level 2, but I'm really, I feel really loved and supported, because both Gareth and I just want to get married, whether that be at level 3 with 10 people with us here in our bubble, or just the 3 of us with the celebrant, you know, like, so that's a big life shift for me. I don't think it really changes anything, but it just, you know, I'm excited. In the horizon, obviously, I've still got Shortland St. I'm going to be in everyone's, you know, faces at 7:00 every night, Monday to Friday. Still going to be hustling for TKC and for Pat. I've got a couple of plays in the horizon, or exhibition works that I'm going to be working through. But what's really great about them is none of them are like, there's no deadlines currently, like, or like in the closest future. So I'm able to just like breathe in the process and really find my flow. And again, like, you know, write the first shit script and then write the next 10 and find what works. But yeah, I think I'm actually feel like, you know, like before I was running at maybe like gear 6. I don't know if you drive a manual, maybe 5 then, if you don't have your 6th gear. But I feel like I'm definitely like, I'm on a bit of a cruising mode, which feels really nice. Like, it feels like I've gotten to a point where I feel like I could cruise a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, I do work full time, and I'm like, man, that's enough for a lot of people, but I'm working over full time. So I think, you know, I'm really claiming my weekends, and just like finding, you know, being able to like meaningfully connect with people and really, really take time with my like meal breaks. I used to work and eat at the same time. But also, you know, I'm really lucky because my partner is such a good cook. And I was like, you know what? You deserve this like 40 an hour that, you know, you cook so hard and well for the flat. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy and like be with these, you know, my flatmates and my partner, and just like have a chat, have a laugh, and enjoy the meal. I think those little moments I really enjoy lately. I know that's because I'm getting older or whatever. But
No, I think that's where the jewels of life are in those small moments, and the things that we take for granted. Last question: we love to leave our listeners with some practical positivity that they can take away and action in their own lifestyles. What would your practical positivity be for our listeners?
Practical positivity. As in like what do I do? What do I do that impacts a positive things for my day?
Yeah. If that's how you want to spearhead it.
Okay. I was like, oh my God, this question feels so big. For me, a positive I get out of my day is if I can drink like my proper amount of water a day. So like I always, every time I have to fill this, I'm like, I've like watered myself. You know what I mean? Like for me, that feels really positive because I'm just like, whenever I take time to really drink my water, I'm like taking a pause, no matter how short or how long that pause is. And like, I don't know, I also just feel more like energized whenever I just actually just drink my water, which sounds really stupid, but it almost feels quite ritualistic. Of like, you know, before I started my workout, I drink water in the middle, I drink loads of water after. When I'm sitting on my computer before I start an email, like in between emails, I'm always drinking water, just because I'm like, okay, restart, new email, you know, it feels like a reset mode for me. But also a positive thing that I do is when you do your to-do lists, be realistic. And actually include life stuff, you know, because you're like, oh, this is work, but actually there's so much that happens in your day. Like you got to do the dishes, you got to put your laundry on, you got to hang your laundry, you know, those are part of the energy you exert in your day, not just what you do for your business. So I would recommend including that, because then you can reflect at the end of the day, holy shit, I did all of these things to sustain myself. And it's not just the amount of, you know, emails or people you talk to. It's like I got out of bed, I made myself a mean breakfast, I washed my dishes because I'm a considerate flatmate. And then, you know, like I made my, like all of those things I think matter. And at the end of the day, I was like, all of that needed energy. And there's only so much energy you have in a day, because sometimes I feel like, oh man, I feel like I did nothing today, which is such a negative thought, when actually you're like, I did so much today. I wiped the bench, you know, you know, like, when you actually think about that, because especially during lockdown at the moment, it's so easy to feel like, fuck, the day just went by and I did nothing. I felt so unproductive. And I was like, fuck, no, I answered 3 emails today. I cooked my flatmate's breakfast. I you know, got the rubbish bin out. Like, those are already 4 things that I didn't, you know, that I didn't value myself in. So I think, yeah, acknowledge that your energy isn't just work focused. Your energy is also for yourself. So I'm like, that's how I've been getting through lockdown. Honestly, I'm so over it.
Us too.
Yeah.
Us too.
I love that though. That's so true. I'm one that my to-do list is like 20 things, and then I get pissed at myself because I only get 5 things done. And it's because, like you said, things like washing or this that I haven't factored in that have taken up time. And then I'm like, oh, I haven't got all my things done. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you've got the clean washing, you know, like you've
got all the chores done.
Exactly. I really value that. I'm just like, or like I'll tidy up the little corner in my room, and I was like, that was beautiful. Good job.
Hey, Marianne, we want to wrap up and send you off. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your energy and your insights. There's so much there for ourselves as well as our audience, especially around self-discovery, just compartmentalizing your tasks like that, and just really finding gratitude in the small things. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Matt, thanks for having me. You guys are great. And I'm like, yeah, you guys are keep working through this lockdown and giving people like just like really, really motivational things. And I'm always like liking your shit. So keep it up.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks, Marianne. See you later.